Good afternoon, everyone. I know we're the last group, so I hope we can keep your attention. My name is Sonja Turić, and on behalf of Group 5, I'd like to say we're glad to have this opportunity today to present the results of our research that has resulted in this policy paper entitled Introduction of E-Government as a Key Precondition for Digitalization and Management of Public Services in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So in our research, we use a specific example of an introduction of an e-service, which is e-projects in the sector of environment in Bosnia and Herzegovina, to showcase what introduction of e-services entails in a broader sense. So most of us here today are civil servants, right? So as a civil servant, how many times have you felt like this gentleman here, bit buried under the paperwork, right? And as a citizen or a business owner, how many times have you felt like this lady here? As Dina mentioned, coming up to the counter, only to be told you're one document short and you need to come back later. So that is the reason the solution we propose for those and many other problems is digitalization of public services. The policy problem our paper addresses is the absence of key preconditions necessary for introduction of e-services in the public sector to allow for more easier, transparent, and faster access to public services to all citizens and other users of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and all in line with the EU standards. So, as we all know, citizens and other users of public services often face a lot of problems in different procedures. Whether you're getting a birth certificate or you're registering a new company, those procedures are often very costly, time-consuming, and not readily accessible. So digitalization of those public services should make them more functional, reliable, efficient, accessible, transparent, accountable, and time and cost saving. So digitalization of the public, a slide back, please. Digitalization of public services is aiming to bring the public administration closer to the citizens and to facilitate the performance of their requests electronically without unnecessary documentation, which is what we're used to now. So in addition, because there's no physical contact between the provider of the service, the civil servant, and the user of the service, there's an increase in transparency and reduction of the risk of corruptive practices. And to tell you a bit more about the background of the problem, my colleague Enida.
Thank you, Sonja. Well, I will tell you something more about the background and context of our topic. As you all know, governments around the world are under the pressure from fast globalization, fiscal, social, and technological changes to provide services that are citizen-centric, efficient, transparent, effective, one-stop, anytime, and non-stop. Technological progress in society of Bosnia and Herzegovina has not been accompanied by a change of business operation of public administration, so many public services still rely on a paper form. Unlike the countries of the region, and especially the European Union, Bosnia and Herzegovina lags far behind when it comes to digitalization of public administration and e-government development. In BIH, there is a problem with legislative framework, such as non-existence of law on e-government and non-application of law on e-document, law on e-signature and e-seal. Also, the full implementation of public administration reform is needed for BIH to meet the priorities and requirements for EU accession by fulfilling tasks in this field. Despite the fact that BIH has joined a number of EU initiatives and signed a number of international conventions in this field, there is still a lack of a vision for digitalization and an e-government strategy at BIH level. In general, we can say that BIH has some good strategies and action plans on informatization, but still the implementation of these documents and solutions in practice is still inadequate. In addition to the financial resources needed to implement e-services, there are organizational issues also, and problems caused by human factor. Well, more about target groups. Well, David will say more about target groups. David.
Recommendations set out in this policy paper are first, decision makers with effective and responsive partners. Second, relevant public administration which in practice is responsible for identify and initiate changes. And international organization with support projects and programs in the field of digitalization and digital transformation of public administration. Due to the complexity of system in Bosnia and Herzegovina, there are state level, there are 2 entities, cantonal levels, and Brčko district. The process of digitalization of public administration is very complex. There are more different approaches to digitalization, more different legislative frameworks, and completely different e-services in Bosnia and Herzegovina. This prevents unified public administration. In this regard, decision makers, relevant policy makers, and international organizations need to work together, and this comprehensive implementation and enforcement process should start from the top, from the state level to the lower levels of government. This is only way to yield results. Thank you. My colleague Una will present key findings.
Thank you, David. So as the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic showed, there is a need for a more modern, flexible, and responsible public administration. The COVID-19 pandemic revealed the unwillingness of society to deal with different unexpected challenges, but also numerous opportunities for institutions to achieve goals in the field of digital transformation of the public sector and the development of e-government in BIH. The establishment of e-services in BIH is a complex task in which administrative bodies should participate at all levels of government. In order to carry out these tasks, it is necessary to have full operation and efficient functioning of the bodies responsible for the implementation and coordination of e-government goals, but also numerous other stakeholders like employees, in our case civil servants, and IT specialists and developers, of course e-service users from the business sector, the administrative bodies and the public institutions, and of course the citizens. In terms of information and communication technologies, institutions should implement e-services in consultation, cooperation, and coordination between relevant institutions so that established technical solutions would not encounter problems such as a lack of interoperability, integration, or communication in the future. These technical solutions require clear strategy for basic registers, information and communication technology standards for data exchange, and standards for technical interoperability. In general, the effectiveness of e-services will depend on the capacity of governments to successfully carry out the optimization and digitalization of the administrative process with the aim of simplifying and speeding up the process. Secondly, adequately establish a performance management system. And thirdly, use the potentials of IT staff and improve the level of computer literacy of civil servants. These are our key findings, and now my colleague Nedžla will present the policy options.
Thank you, Una. So in order to identify the most feasible and practical options that could be recommended through our policy paper, our team conducted a past analysis. And the first major option for policy change is a coherent and comprehensive legislative framework that is based on the EU strategic documents and agenda. Currently, the problem in BIH is not the lack of the modern legislation, but the problem is the fact that existing legal framework does not correspond to is not implemented for years. And now, due to the delayed process, the progress is slow and it is inadequate to compare to what needs to be accomplished. Second options for a policy change is, of course, interoperability system of the e-service, established e-service throughout the country. Why is this necessary? This is necessary in order to ensure valid communication and coordination between the administrative bodies. It is important because it needs to ensure the communication of administrative bodies to citizens and vice versa, and in particular for initiating certain services from administrative bodies. Having an inadequate legal framework that enable interinstitutional services means that the most of the e-services that are established and that have been set up offer, unfortunately, one-way interaction. And these kinds of services are making downloadable forms. They must be printed and then submitted to the relevant and competent authorities for further action. So this principle does not contribute to the efficiency of the public sector and the public services, so we cannot, unfortunately, talk about the efficiency of the e-government yet. The third option options for a policy change is re-engineering of the public processes and reorganization of the bodies, of the state bodies on all levels of government that are included in this process of introduction and implementation of the e-services. Also, centralized information is needed. Why is this important in the context of our policy paper and the case study that we conducted? It is of a great importance that all levels of government in BIH have an access to the e-service. From the case study we conducted, it is informational system of projects and partners that will give decision makers access to the current needs for the implementation of the environmental projects. This will enable timely inclusion in environmental projects. It will enable finding adequate partners for the implementation of these projects. It will enable coordinating projects, applying and finally implementation of the projects financed by the international partners in the future. Also, the citizens' perception of the modernized administration will change when concrete reform measures are implemented, such as one-stop shop service. This service will enable putting out of use processes such as verification of the written documents, and it will be particularly significant at a local level, at municipalities and cities, and when services such as electronic signature and seal are put into practice. Another obstacle for further introduction of e-services and e-government is the low digital literacy in BIH society. So digitalization is a huge challenge due to, firstly, because of the lack of awareness about the long-term benefits among public employees, and secondly, because of the lack of understanding and ignorance of the role and possibilities of the e-government. So our team concluded that the issue of introduction and implementation of the e-government cannot be treated just as computerization of the public processes. It is a process that consists of political, legal, and organizational reforms. And finally, about our recommendation of our policy paper. Sonja, please.
Yeah, so here you can see the set of recommendations from our policy paper, and a holistic approach is needed with all of these. The first recommendation is that we need reforms in legal and policy framework. And what that means? It means we need to adopt e-government law and e-government development strategy at the state level. We need to harmonize regulations on state, entity and district level in the field of ICT infrastructure and electronic communications. And thirdly, we need to point out that until there is full implementation of e-signature and e-seal, we can't implement e-government in full. So.
The second recommendation relates to organizational reforms, which implies firstly establishing a coordinated institutional framework, secondly a defined institution that will manage the system and provide technical support, and thirdly making and conducting an analysis and a feasibility study.
In order to e-systems be interinstitutional, the e-service should be based on interoperability framework, which requires connecting systems to be a part of a single public register of administrative procedures, implementing common databases and public register. It needs to be created standards and procedures for specific IT solutions and tasks. It is important to create a web platform to also improve the email server for necessary enhanced communication, and it is necessary to establish customer support, which means to establish a technical support team for the implementation.
Fourth recommendations, organizational administrative procedures and services. This means process optimization and focusing on activities on possibilities that open data offers.
A recommendation which relates to human resourcing implies the existence of qualified IT personnel, increasing the level of computer literacy of civil servants, and strengthening the long-term capacities of employees who are responsible for project planning at all levels of governments.
And the last recommendation is that we need a continuous risk analysis and quality service management. So that means we need to establish a unique system for monitoring, evaluating, and reporting on the quality of e-services. So that would be all from us today. And to summarize what we were talking about, here is a quote by Mr. Alan Brown. Thank you for your attention. And if you have any questions, please feel free.